And I was saying to the man who we're going to
Yes.
present this to is a perfectionist.
Yes.
And what I noticed was that when it said Bailey Sisters, I said there was no T.
Stub there, when of course didn't look like it was a T. It could have been an L. So
and he worked on it and worked on it.
okay.
And then when we get in front of Baba,
Yes.
and we're able to go up and present
it to him, and he kept saying T.
He said no T.
Sairam, dear listeners, welcome to Sai SOUL 100. Our guests today are Sisters Audrey and April Bailey, who are joining us from Poconos Mountains, Pennsylvania. Sairam sisters, thank you for joining Sai SOUL 100.
Sairam, Sister Parable.
Sairam, please share your story.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to say is that sometimes people find it hard to believe that an African-American family who were raised Christians are devotees of Sri Satya Sai Baba and see him as God. And they ask why, how could you see him as God, or how did you come to see him as God? And I say that in every religion, most of the time, we think of God as omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, as well as all-loving. And when we have had glimpses of that, when Baba has allowed us to see him demonstrate his omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience, and his abounding, boundless love, then we say, we have found God on earth, the avatar of this age, Sri Satya Sai Baba.
I found him twice, because in the mid-70s, when we were planning our trip out to California, my sister recalls very clearly that I was watching TV and there was a film, and at the end of that film, there was Baba working these miracles. Now, that was one that almost left my mind. So as she's going to explain, I always say that he sort of drips on you slowly, but surely you're going to be wound in there. And when I had to move out without her because she couldn't get her transcripts out to California in time, she was in New York going to college, and my younger son and I moved with cousins out there waiting for her to come. And while waiting, and we'd moved to a little home in Carson, California, and I was watching this afternoon program that had all of these very sort of unique programs on there. And I think it was the Lost Years of Jesus. It was the name of it, because it was around Easter time. And at the end, they said, well, who's doing miracles? Is there anyone that does miracles or does things as they say Jesus did? And all of a sudden, they showed this little fellow with this huge afro. And at that time, the afro hairdo was in style. And I said, oh my God. And I ran to the telephone, called long distance my sister, and I said, there's that guy, he's in India and he's doing these miraculous things. Well, I didn't know that it was the Vibhuti Abhishekam at that time, because I could not understand how he was wheeling his hand around and all of the Vibhuti was coming down, and more than could ever fit back in this vase. And at that point, couldn't find anything else about him, just off. 7 years later, still in California, all of a sudden, I wasn't doing so well. I had gone into business. I had, of all things, long distance trucking company partnered with someone. That was never I'd never studied for that or anything, but it just fell in my lap, and it was an opportunity for a business, but it had gone sour because the fellow died. He got sick and died. And there I was trying to sort of make my way, and I had all these trucks. I had to get rid of the trucks. But at that time, I said, we moved with my cousin looking for a smaller place. And as we were moving our things, he had quite a library of books. And there was this guy with the afro again on the cover of a book that we never saw again. But he's sitting in this wide chair, this wide wicker chair that was very popular in those days in the 70s. And I said, there's that guy. Here's the guy again. And we moved at that point that very week. We couldn't find that book amongst all the books that were moved, not again. And it seemed that it was like, now you see me, now you don't. Well, somehow you're going to start hearing about the first miracles because she went to the library.
I was looking for a book on him.
Yes.
And when I initially went down to the library in Long Beach, they said, we don't have any books on him because around that time, I also saw a book called Alpha Thinking.
Yes.
And in that book, it said something about Sai Baba, the master. And so on that Easter weekend, Audrey said, try to go down to the beach, and said we were a little depressed because of her lending out the money, and we didn't have a lot for that Easter weekend. And I went to the library again in the hopes that I could find something. And again, the librarian said that we don't have anything, but I decided to go to the catalog because you had catalogs there, not internet at that time. And you would look it up. And I saw something that said Baba, B-A-B-A, Shulman. And I said, let me see if that is a book on Sri Satya Sai Baba. And when I got the book, it was. And we sat all day on Easter Sunday, and we read that book aloud. And within that book, this was a gentleman who had been a screenwriter and had gone to see Baba in the late 60s, and he wrote a book. And we were in 1986, so we didn't know
if he was still alive.
Right, if he was even still alive.
Is he still alive?
Or is there any way we can contact someone? Because in the book it said, well, there are centers in the Los Angeles area. And I think they mentioned the Hollywood Center. And we called and went to the Hollywood Center.
That's where we started.
And that is where we started.
For that time. And then we decided, let's pack up and go home. The 7 years, it hasn't worked. I've lost my money. Let's go home. As we're shopping around, we happened to go into, they have drugstores out there, Save On Drugs or something like that. And this is a big news store. So we were going in there for some pharmaceuticals and things. And there was a little gentleman who stopped to talk and just started talking out of nowhere and talking about India of all places. And I said, we were wondering, we want to go to India. We've just heard about things that are happening there. And so that was the first thing. And then we get on the road coming back home. So we're going to get to how we got to India because it's the strangest thing. When he's calling you, he will get you there. And that's going to be our theme of talk today because we had not seen snow for 7 years. And we're coming across country, my son, Christopher, April, and myself singing. And all of a sudden, I forget where we hit up there, but Flagstaff, there, all of a sudden, snow started coming. And we had no windshield wiper on the driver's side. And we're singing budgeons all the way. And do you know not a drop of snow hit that windshield, not clung to that windshield, brought us in. We were coming in after dark. Just every now and then you'd see a light and you'd see our headlights, but you're supposed to have a mound of snow sitting on your car. I mean, these are things that he just kept taking care of us. And of course, out there, that was the poorest we had ever been, honestly. We thought we were going to seek our fortune. I'd just come out of Fordham University. I took a long time getting there, but I did it. My sister was going, and I was, fairly sure we were going to be a success. But coming back, we realized that everyone that said, oh, come back, you can stay with us until you get your apartment and get settled. Well, when you actually hit those doors, you find out everybody is saying, well, maybe she can stay here and your son can stay here, but we've never stayed separately.
This is New York.
This is New York. We're in New York now. And that's 1986, I think.
Mhm.
And I do want to mention, I think you said that the age gap between the two of you is 20 years
20
old,
years.
Yes.
Yes,
right? And
exactly.
so ever since your parents passed away, April
Has
lived
been
with you.
in my care. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
And April, you
Um,
were 10 years old when your parents passed, around that age.
Yes,
Right.
when my mother died, and she was
Yes.
even younger when my father died.
Right.
But they always raised us to just, it was just a natural thing. My sister comes with me, and she was raised just like she's my daughter. So she used to always say, mother, sister. Here we are, mother, sister. But once we got back there, and I said to April, I said, oh, we can't separate. I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, do you want to go to India? I still have the American Express card. Now, mind you, no money, American Express card. And she said, yes, and I'm going to let you take it from there.
Well, I will say that I had never traveled alone abroad. I was only 24. We were able to get a ticket through Parou's Travel. Some people told us about Sumohan and Parou's Travel, and they helped us get my ticket and everything. And I can say this, Baba took great care of me, bringing me there, even to the point of when I got there first, and I only had about $300 going all the way to India.
Yeah.
Okay, and when I arrived, and you know how I don't know if you remember, you would come into Chennai, which was called Madras at that time, and you would have to go and change terminals and everything, and then take the domestic flight over to Bangalore, and then the taxi. And once you cleared customs, you could not come back in the building. And I went out of the building, and it was late at night, and I didn't know there were taxi drivers and different people saying, can I take your bags? Can I take you here? And I was just kind of flustered, and I said, Baba, what am I to do? What am I to do? And in my head, and all of a sudden, the customs agent comes out of the building, which they say they never do, and says, you come back in the building. And when I came back in, there were 3 other ladies traveling to Puttaparthi, and I sat inside the building, and we got a cab together the next day going to Puttaparthi. And on the first darshan, he looked at me with this beautiful smile, as if to say, did you think I wouldn't get you here safely? I did. I took good care of you. And at that time, he started coming in my dreams and giving me all kinds of third eye visions and things like that, which were wonderful. And what I can say first of all, let me stop. We
the first time
are here without Warren for the first time, our brother. So I would like to say that Warren was the first one to get an interview. And that was in 1988. Now, can you please explain that first? And then we'll go to 1989 for the family interview, and then 90.
Yes, Warren's experience was quite an example of that I want to say expressway to Swami, because when he was leaving, first of all, we were all teachers, and he did not want to give up his summer to see this charlatan who was promising pie in the sky and saying he's God. But since my sisters look like they're just going batty, and she has her my nephew, my son, going all the way over to India, I guess I have to go. So he tells people. But then Warren, at that time, Warren used to indulge in things that are now legal, which the marijuana, and it wasn't medical. And so he thought, if I have to go, I'm going prepared. So I guess he rolled up his little cigarettes and packed them away and got ready. But even before that, we had to, in New York, there was a different process of getting your passport and your visa. And we were leaving in a heat wave. I mean, it had not been that hot in New York for so many years. And each time, and I'm saying each time because it took me 3 visits to stand outside of Rockefeller Center on a line that wrapped around the corner, and you had to be there about 7 in the morning for the doors to open at 9 and possibly get inside by 12 noon. Okay. Once doing that, you get all the way to the window, they look at yourself, and they said, well, now you go down to Worth Street and get yourself another birth certificate and get one for this boy here because he can't go on. So it was quite a mess. And we went through that whole thing twice. And the third time, we finally said, well, Warren, this is the last day you can get a passport to go. You're going to, lose your ticket and everything else. He said, okay, I'll go. Do you know that when we marched up there that third day, there was not a line, not one person in sight. Up the stairs we go, no one at the windows. Come right ahead. Got his passport. It couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. They gave that man. And so we had to head over to get to the Indian consulate before 12 noon because their policy was get there, drop it off before 12 noon, come back just before 5 p.m. in the evening and pick it up. Okay. Well, we got there shortly after 12. They said, no, come in. That would have been a no-no. Any other time, no. And so we march in, and they said, okay, we're going to have to mess around here in New York until, roughly 5 o'clock, And the lady said, oh, no, you don't have to go anyplace. Just wait over there. Didn't he have that visa? The visa in about 20 minutes, finished. So off we're ready to go to India. We're traveling on Singapore Airlines. And of course, as I told you a minute ago, that, he was going to take a little something to lighten his load and his boredom as he thought it was going to occur. And so once we boarded, we were headed, but we didn't know that we had to stop. And then the Singapore Airlines used to put you up overnight in a nice fashionable hotel. It was very nice. And but before you could deplane, there was a gentleman that came on board and said, welcome to beautiful Singapore. And trafficking and using illegal drugs is punishable by death. Thank you. Or you never, it was like, what? And so, of course, he bitterly went in that bathroom, tearing up those things in the toilet. So you see, there's Swami preparing him all the way. You will not come over here with that. I will show you can manage without it. It wasn't happening for me, but it was something you had done for a while. But that was amazing. So there he's clean, but he's very not happy. And all the way there, we get in that long taxi drive and he's fussing all the way. Now, the first day we got there was afternoon. And of course, everybody that was coming earlier got the nice rooms, and they put us in that infamous shed, the family shed. So that wasn't too agreeable for either Warren or my son Chris, who was a young boy. We managed to make it through the evening, and the next day we go to Darshan. Now my knees were always bad, so I'm sitting in the chairs. April is sitting with the rest of the ladies in the ladies area, and she was the only one to know that if one of your family members is selected, the rest of the family should go to come in on the interview. But since we didn't know, we were sitting apart, no one knew because Warren and Christopher were sitting with the men. And all of a sudden, I see Warren stepping out there with his Time Warner shirt. He was working for Time. He was teaching, and he had another job with Time Warner Cable Company. And instead of getting a nice white suit made right in the village there where everybody else went and did, here he is sitting in this big Time Warner shirt with the elbow, the arms crossed. And as Baba passed by, I was kind of ticked, and I said, well, we came all the way over here. That's what you think. You think you're so much, you're doing him a favor, traveling these many miles and spending your money And here you are, and he passes by and he doesn't say anything, he doesn't look your way. And so he did pass by, and then he passed by the ladies and he went over to the men's side. Now, Warren was not sitting in the front row seat. He was sitting a good, I would say about 10, 11 rows back. And as Baba came to his area, he turned around and he said, you come, you come. Now, my son didn't come. He was just sitting, he was sitting with his uncle, and Warren saying me. And then all of a sudden, I see this figure stand. I said, that's my brother. And I said it out loud. I'm sitting there with these people for the first day, my first real darshan. I said, well, he didn't pick us, but at least he picked my brother, as though he was supposed to. You see, that's what you think when you go there. And then the ladies behind, they said, that's your brother? You go. I said, no, he didn't pick me. You go there with that arrogance. I mean, he had quite a job working with me. That's why it took all these years. I'm telling you to kind of, I don't know, but all of that New York chip fell off of my shoulders, and I found out where I was, because at that point I said, well, okay, I better go. And I marched all the way out there. I know people that have done that before, and they were so embarrassed, but they marched out there, and all of a sudden, the person called the Mataji. Mataji was the head of the women's section. She was quite a tough lady because she said, no, go back. Too late. Door closed. Go back. I said, oh. And I'm really embarrassed, big ego. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm going back. Well, the truth is that that calling was for Warren. Yes, we were all supposed to come, but Baba was calling Warren strong, because there was no way he was supposed to have that passport. He was not supposed to get that visa in that short time. Then he has these terrible things with him that were illegal at that time there. And here you can see what's going on. And he's warned and allowed to know, get rid of these. Then he comes. And that's the first day of Darshan. And he's called for an interview. Now, because Baba had injured his hip, and he actually had to, when we saw him again, he had to be rolled out on the veranda, as I recall. Correct. And I recall, I was not used to the conservativeness, just waiting and being still. And so when I saw that he wasn't going to come down and do really darshan, he came out on the veranda. I said, hi. Do you know he turned around and
went,
said,
hi,
and
to
everybody.
To
everybody. And then he started going,
everybody started
probably
waving.
said, she's arrived. That one has arrived. Let's contain her.
No.
But in that interview, I know that Warren went in with several watches on his hands, because someone along the way had sold him these 3 watches. And so he had them all on his arm, and he gets into the place there, and Baba is materializing nice lockets and things on chains that don't have hasp on them, and just stretching them and putting on the person's neck. And then he comes to Warren and says, what time is it? And Warren said, oh. And then he said, I think he tells him Pudapati time or something like that.
And he had New York time.
Oh, he said, I have New York time. I have this time.
And Baba said,
on these
India
watches,
time.
India time. So at that point, then he said, I looked up, and there was a clock with Baba's face on it right in front. Why is he asking me for the time? But then afterward, he said he had to realize, what time is it in your life? Where are you now? What are you talking about? It's this time, that time. Where are you now? It was the very last time is in his entire life that he ever picked up marijuana, any other illegal drug, alcohol, all of that, finished. Who does that?
That's right.
I mean, you can go to Betty Ford's clinics, you can go to the best of all of these various places, but who in an instant, one visit. And he did a lot of things. He told Warren in his interview, because there's always an outer interview, and then he brings you inside a little room. So it's your personal time. And he told Warren things he said he only thought about. He told Warren that he knew about the illness that was in his stomach. Warren never told us about that until much later. He said, and I never went to the doctor. I just thought, what the heck? I can't be here long or something. But he said, Baba materialized in oil, rubbed it on his stomach. But it seemed that Warren was the key, because just about all of our interviews, with the exception of one, where he asked for my sister specifically, he would always wait until, if Warren came 2 weeks later and we were there, we were not called until Warren arrived. So that was very interesting. So he was the key, and he was the most difficult one. But he was quite, another soul like him, I don't know. I haven't found a brother like that again, because all he did was to just serve. He was one heck of a teacher. And he did pass away in that head-on collision in 2021. But students came from around the country. But the strangest thing is, August 18th, 1988, that occurred, that first interview with Warren. August the 18th, 1989 is when he called our family again. And he called twice that week, first for the family and then for my sister, which was very interesting on even how it was done, because the same Mataji, the same one that sent me back, she's going to tell you what happened.
We were called for a family interview, and it was very, very funny, because the night before, we were having some problems, and it was not so comfortable. And Audrey said, he's always on the men's side, and he doesn't come to the ladies' side, and I don't know, if he calls, I may not even go. And the next day, he calls us in. And Baba proceeded to talk about almost every verbatim,
almost verbatim.
You never call us. You're always on the men's side. And Audrey, it was so funny, because he almost repeated it verbatim.
And everybody knew. They said,
everybody looked.
They looked. Here I said, oh my God, I do know who I'm dealing with. And I think I told you that in that interview. I was like the child in the class, the bad children, not bad, but the mischievous ones in classes. We were all teachers. You know what to do with them. You keep them busy. And so you make them monitors when you're very busy, so that they can say, well, then he said to me, you get that bag over there. Oh, of course, I pranced over there, because God gave me an errand to run.
And
I got his bag. He has a big plastic bag in the window with all of the packets of the booty. Give it to, oh my goodness, I thought I was the teacher's pet then, that's for sure. But now I'll let you please go ahead.
He allowed us so much grace. It was like, as Audrey used to say, Santa Claus sitting down. And that was the next day, after our first family interview. And he said, I'll call you tomorrow. And I got all dressed up for the very first time in a sari. And I sat and I was waiting for Baba, and he walked around for darshan, and he picked a huge group from Singapore and from Italy. And then he went in to the interview room, and they were filing in. And I was sitting there saying, oh gosh, Baba, you said you were going to call me. I was about to break out in tears. And all of a sudden, I see Mataji walking and looking in the crowd. And then she looks at me and says, are you from New York? And I said, yes. And she said, come, Swami wants to see you. And so I came into the interview room, which was packed at that time. That is Baba. And I was sitting trying to squeeze down at the back of the interview room door because it was so full. And he said, "You come and sit right here at his feet." And that is the interview in which he gave me the earrings. Okay. And the next year was 1990. As you can see, the earrings are exquisite. And I only would wear them to Sai functions or when I was talking about Baba or some very special fancy place, because I never wanted to lose them or anything like that. So I always longed for something that I could wear at all times to represent his love and his protection. Because at that time we were officially very new. It was only since '86, so it was 3 and 4 years since we had come officially to him. And that next year in 1990, we came back to Puttaparthi or Prashanti Nilayam with Warren, Audrey, Christopher, and myself, her son. And we were staying in the shed. And I went into the bathroom and I saw a lady's ring. And at first I was thinking, this is Prashanti Nilayam. Perhaps Baba's answering my prayer for a ring instead of just having the earrings that I can't wear so much. And then a thought hit me that, as I said, would have hit me at any other time, at any other place. I've got to find the owner. This is a lady's ring that has an enamel face of Baba on it. And so I said, well, I'll wear it just in case no one comes forward. I'll spread the news all around. I have the lady's ring. If somebody lost a ring, please come to me. And I tried to put it on my right finger. It wouldn't go over because, as we know, we're not actually symmetrical. And I put it on my left finger, and it went on so very tightly. After 3 days, a lady comes forward and she says, "Oh, it's my ring. Thank you so very much." She thanked me profusely. Baba had not materialized it, but he blessed it for her. And I forgot about it. Well, we get called for interview in the next few days. And he said, "Let's see, what did I give you last time?" And I said, "Earrings, Swami, earrings." And he waved his hand and he materialized a ring. That ring, which I didn't really understand the significance of at the time, was the same type of ring that the lady lost and I had just returned. It was put on this finger, it wouldn't go over. And he kept looking at me pointedly, like, "Don't you remember?"
That's what you did.
Right. And this finger, but it was very tight. And it didn't matter to me at that point. And once it went on this finger, and I said, the Lord made it. He usually makes things that fit perfectly. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to wear it. And then he said, "Take it off. It is very tight." And so I began tugging on it, and he said, "Be gentle, be gentle." And so I wanted to hold his hand, and I put my hand over it, and he gently worked the ring off. And he said, "Take it in the other room and I will change it for you." When we get to the outer room again, he tosses the ring to a gentleman, and he says something in either Telugu or Tamil or something. And then he asks for the ring back. And he takes the ring between his index finger and thumb, holds it up, and remember, it's an enamel ring with his face on it. And he goes, and he changes the ring in that moment to this ring.
Stupas on the side.
Sarvadharma stupas on each side and the cross in the center.
Yeah.
And so I can say this, when I was sitting at his feet at that time, and he began to go like this. And I wave his hand in that familiar circular motion. And I was right under his hand.
And I saw it too.
Yeah, and she saw it too. Yeah. And I saw gold start to appear, a band of gold, it looked like to me, across his palm. And then all of a sudden, boop, what popped out was a statue
Statue,
of
yeah.
Shirdi Sai Baba, a golden statue of Shirdi Sai Baba, and he gave it to someone else in the room.
Mhm.
But when people used to say, oh, does he have something up his sleeve? Does he, here I am sitting right under his hand and watching it
Yeah,
materialize
that was
on
amazing.
his palm and then become this statue.
Yeah.
So that was enormous. And again, omnipresence. He is demonstrating his omnipresence, his omnipotence,
Okay.
and of course, omniscience in all of these different circumstances. Audrey, did you want to say something about Chris? When
Yeah.
Chris came into the
Yeah,
room,
Chris was he was the son that you always wait for. And he came around, I guess he was around, what, about 15 at that time, 16 years old? Because I know that was the time they were building the Hanuman statue. And he saw the guys working, putting the thing on their heads, and they're going. And he said, but they're so thin. He was always training for football and everything. So he felt and he would get up every morning with those young men, and they would call Christopher, and they would come for him. He worked on that Hanuman statue while he was in there. But when he got into that interview, Baba did tell him about himself, because he was just at that point where 50,000 people are telling him in school, oh, it's hip to do this, and your parents are saying, don't do this, you don't go here, you don't. When we were trying to tell him, no, you don't go here, you don't do this, you don't do that, he would come and slam the door. Well, didn't he go into that interview and Baba told him everything he was doing? He said, you're with the wrong bad company. He said, you slammed the door. I told him. He said, I thought his eyes were going to pop out, because he said, he's spying on us, Mom. He's spying on us. Yes, he did. From that interview on, though, I'm telling you. But then he did say to him, now this does come in later, about who do you think I am? He said, I think I know who you are, I think. And so that's when Baba takes his, now, did he take
Baba, when he
took
took his foot and put it in his belly.
and his belly,
And-
and
and
then the
kind
solar
of-
plexus. Later on, Chris does get killed. He's killed by somebody, mistaken identity. But in that interview, from that time on, he had a different understanding of who Baba was, because it was not until the time that he had been killed that we were able to just go through his room, and under his room, under his big loft bed, he had a little puja stand. And he put Jesus in there, of course. He had Jesus, he had Ganapati, who he loved, and he had Baba. And all of this vibhuti, I never even knew it was down there. So when he did leave us, he was shot where? Where Baba put his foot, actually, in that area, the solar plexus. And that was something. I thought about that later. I said, maybe he took pain away. I don't know what that was. I know he's with Baba. I don't worry. I, of course, miss my child every day. Every day. And it's been many, many years now. But I know he's there.
And so many different miracles that we have
gosh, yeah.
had. And even in that first year, I didn't bring the pictures, but we were following someone else at the time who it's an extension of Baba.
Yes, because that was the dripping for me.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a book called God's Way of Life.
God's
and
Way
it
of Life.
talked about
everything Baba taught.
Right. That we are here to learn, and we are going back to God,
Right.
and when we are perfect after many lifetimes.
Right.
And in that book, the lady used to have pictures where light would come out in the pictures, or long cords that were attached to people of light. And my gosh, she said that these were either connections to God or
So that's where your soul is attached.
spiritual beings. And there's a picture that we have of Baba's picture where this light came out in the photo.
Yeah.
And in 1986, when
We
we were reading the book, there was a young man who came, and he was living there at the time, and he was taking a picture, and I heard Baba's voice clearly saying, "I'm going to get in this picture." And to make a long story short, when the picture was developed, here was this long white light. Also, we worked on an album that we finished, and in 2001, Baba came in Darshan, and he played that nice little game that he likes to play. We're waiting. Gosh, Baba comes down the aisle, and then when he gets to us, just before he crosses over to someone else, again, I am sitting there saying to myself, what happened? And I'm about to cry. And then all of a sudden he turns around with this big smile, and he comes toward us, and he puts his hand on the album and blesses it and takes the letters from Audrey. And it wasn't until, as we know, 2001, we came back 7 days to the day before 9/11.
That's correct.
And we weren't able to go back for some years. So we next came in 2006, and we were able to sing for Swami at Guru Purnima.
Right.
We were working on the album, and we had a lot of devotees who were with us singing. Our backup singer is called Sai SOUL.
Yeah.
And we had been sending letters or emails and things and requests back and forth. Can we come to sing for Baba?
Yeah.
And before we were given permission to come over, I remember Dr. Reddy saying he presented the album, and Baba went through all of the different liner notes and the album, and he said, "Let them come." And
that was nice. That was nice.
And when we finally were there, it was just so beautiful. In going to sing for him, we were making a program to hand to him.
Yes.
And we were going to use, of course, the CD cover.
Yes.
And we were here in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And I was saying to the man, Baba is who we're going to present this to is a perfectionist. Yes. Everything has to be just so. And he kept saying, we're taking a picture of a picture.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of degrading in the quality. And what I noticed was that when it said Bailey Sisters, I said there was no T. It did not.
Little stub there went across. Didn't look like it was a T. It could have been an L. So
and he worked on it and worked on it.
Okay.
And then when we get in front of Baba and we're able to go up and present it to him,
and he kept saying
T. He said no T. And I said, oh my gosh.
I said, what is he saying?
Oh my gosh.
Baba said, what did you say?
He said no T. And then he turned the pages and looked and said, see, T. No T.
Yes, he did.
And so I said, oh gosh, here's again his omniscience and omnipresence. He was there with us.
Well, we have a mighty God. I was so glad they sang that song. Bob is a mighty God, because he is. He can be playful. He can be anything that you want him to be. You know, it was amazing. You know, at the end, he was always in the wheelchair. Well, we started singing God Lives in India. And do you know he got up out that chair? He stood up and he stood until the end of the program.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it was real. That was amazing. That was amazing. It's wonderful just having him as your constant companion, what he is.
Yes, he is.
And
And
this
his
year,
teachings of unity and diversity, so beautiful. And we're just blessed to have been called
Yes.
by the avatar of the Kali age. And he
he's
knows
always with us.
everything. I know he's with us at all times.
I'm very glad we could tell these stories again because it just brings you right back.
so Sairam sisters, thank you for sharing your stories. Many wonderful, wonderful blessings. In fact, all four of you, Sister Audrey, Sister April, of course, Brother Warren, and Audrey's
Christopher.
son, Brother Chris,
Yes.
each one of you, Swami touched each one of your hearts in different
Yes.
ways.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Uniquely, yet as
Yes.
a family.
Yes. Absolutely.
Starting with Brother Warren,
Yes, that
starting the
Warren.
journey through Brother Warren.
Yes.
And then, of course, young Chris, how blessed he was,
Yes.
how blessed he is that
Yes,
we
he
have
is.
Swami's love, guidance, and that in that interview of Swami putting his feet onto his
Yes.
belly,
Yes.
Yes.
even during sorrow times, hard times,
Yeah.
you could feel Swami's presence.
Oh,
yes.
it brought us through. I don't know where I got that energy from. I don't know.
So your
So,
your 18-year-old son had a chance to carry that Hanuman
yes.
statue
Yes.
and
Yes.
install it along with everybody else because he knew he can do this, right? And then he
Yes.
had altar in his room.
Yes, that
What-
was amazing. I never knew it was there. I never
How
knew.
many 18-year-olds get a chance to do that?
And he was
All the time.
always serving and helping. We didn't know that until the
Oh,
funeral.
yes.
What I can say is we found out so many wonderful things about him. And I just recall him saying that there was a young lady
Yes.
who got up and said, I was afraid to go to school because of being attacked at one time. And she would not go to school. And Chris found out about it, and we didn't know. He would get up to go to school, but he would get up extra early and go and pick her up and escort her to school so that she would not be afraid to go.
Yeah.
How beautiful. He was a beautiful soul. And we were just so blessed to have him in our family, and we're so blessed to have Baba in our lives. And all I can say is thank you, Baba. And we are so grateful. We are so grateful.
Sairam.
Sairam, and then of course to the two of you, Sister April, showering you with so many
Yes,
loving gifts and guidance, and of course walking past you and then coming back to play with you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then Sister Audrey, your rock solid heart has been transformed into beautiful petal, soft, loving.
Yes, that was a big
necessary.
one. That was major.
Swami changed your heart.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So beautiful.
So with
But he said, you have a good heart. You remember
he
that?
said that. He did say, he said, she doesn't know about something when he blessed her. He signed the book. I have a book upstairs that he signed. And he said in I guess, Telugu, that she doesn't know about all of this, but she has a good heart.
And believes.
And believes, yes. So that was my first interview. He did that when I was the errand girl.
This was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Thank you. Sairam, dear listeners, thank you for listening to Sai Soul 100 with Sisters Audrey and April Bailey. I'm Prabha Swaminathan. Until next time, Jai Sairam.